Kick things off. Thank you all for coming. My name is Andrea Tiwari, and I am the president of Alpha Epsilon Lambda. Alpha Epsilon Lambda is a graduate honor society dedicated to scholarship and leadership. So with our other officers, Satya and Naresh and Samantha there, we have organized this last lecture series that we're holding this fall. You may be familiar with the last lecture series as it became very popular a few years ago. It actually was a long-running lecture series at Carnegie Mellon. And it was actually a long-running lecture series at Carnegie Mellon, and the theme was, if you could only give one more lecture, what would you say? So we decided to run a series like that here at Virginia Tech through AEL. And our first last lecture speaker this semester will be Mike Hochella. So Dr. Mike Hochella is a university distinguished professor at Virginia Tech, concentrating in the area of nanogeoscience. He received his bachelor's and master's from Tech and his Ph.D. from Stanford. Mike has won a wide variety of awards in his career to date, including a Fulbright Scholarship, the Humboldt Award from the Alexander from Humboldt Foundation, a Dana Medal from the Mineralogical Society of America, and Virginia Scientist of the Year. He is a fellow of 6 international scientific societies, a former president of the Geochemical Society, and has served on high-level advisory boards at the National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy. Many of his former advisees are now professors at leading institutions around the world, while others pursue careers in publishing, national labs, and industry. His most recent PhD graduate, Dr. Rebecca French, who some of you may know, is now a congressional fellow sponsored by the American Geophysical Union, and she has just been selected to work in the office of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Mike's research interests include studying the role that nanoscience and mineral surface geochemistry and biogeochemistry play in major aspects of the earth science. And also he studies mineral-microbe interactions from both geochemical and biochemical perspectives, looking at nutrients and toxins in the environment. Oh, please come in. And their mobility within the environment. Mike is a pilot, so he enjoys flying, and he also enjoys golf. Among students who work with him, Mike is regarded as someone who can offer excellent suggestions, helpful perspective, and supportive encouragement. So we're very much looking forward to hear what Mike Hochella has to say in our first installment of the AEL Last Lecture. Let's welcome Mike.
Who are you talking about? That was very nice, Andrea. I really appreciate that very much. And it is a pleasure to speak to organizations like AEL. I've done it at the undergraduate level, the graduate level, the professional level. And there are 25 people in here, and I like that a lot better than 250 people. So thank you very much for coming. It's really an honor for me to be here, not the other way around. We are going to do a little exercise first, and this will require you to write a few phrases on your piece of paper. I'm not going to collect these or embarrass you in any way. I will not call on you. You must be honest with yourself. You must think deeply for a few minutes to list the things that I want you to list. And I want you to keep this piece of paper for the rest of your life, and I am not kidding. This is my last lecture. You're going to keep this piece of paper for the rest of your life. Put it in a keepsake box, or put it in a drawer that when you move, you'll definitely move the stuff in that drawer. And keep looking at it. And I'll tell you what to do with it later. But let's start. First thing I want you to do on this piece of paper, very thoughtfully and carefully, but pretty much the first thing that pops into your mind is list what you, as an individual, what you do best. List what you do best. And I only want 2 or at the most 3 things, and one more qualification. For reasons that we don't want to trump everything else, leave anything religious, whatever your religion is, or if you don't have one, or if you do, whatever it is, just leave that out. That's a separate category. So list what you do best, other than anything having to do with religion. List what you do best. You do best. And anyone else, just you. No more than 3 things. 2 is fine. about 2 or 3 of you are still writing. That's fine. You can keep working on that. But let me give you the second assignment, which is sort of related to the first one, so you can still work on the first one if you wish. The second one is list what you don't do well or have a hard time doing. The thing that you do maybe the worst, I'm looking for extremes here, or that you have the hardest time doing in your whole life, anything but religion. And the last thing, both of those I just wanted 2 or 3 things most for each. This I only want one thing. And it's usually the thing that comes first to your mind, but not necessarily. So I'll give you a good 60 seconds to think about this. And here's the question. What are you most, where most is underlined and bolded, what are you most passionate about in your whole life? Your whole existence, what are you most passionate about? Everyone is satisfied that you have something good down. So as soon as I see every pen, don't rush, but as soon as I see every pen go down, we'll start. After all, this lecture is really about you, not about me. Ready to go? There we go. Can we work with this? What are we going to do? All right. So I want to start by reading you something, actually. It's not very long. It's 2 pages double-spaced. And I'll just read what I have here. The following are excerpts from my Virginia Tech graduate commencement address given in Castle Coliseum on Friday, December 14, 2007. So we have a fall graduation every year. And I gave the commencement address to the graduates, and and fall commencement in 2007 in Kassel. The speech was given before roughly 5,000 people, the largest group that I have ever addressed. Right? Pretty intimidating, right? I mean, you hear your voice just sort of going off and then coming back about a half second later. Not very good for speaking cadence and pace, but you sort of have to deal with it. Okay, so listen very carefully to these words. Remember what you just put for questions 1 and 2, what you do best and what you have the hardest time doing. Remember what you wrote there. And remember you're going to keep that forever, right? Not that it's going to stay that way, because you can scribble on there, doodle over the years and modify it. That's okay. It's okay to modify that. Listen to this. I'm quoting from this speech. I grew up in a middle class but deeply dysfunctional, torn, and at times frightening home. That's me. Alcoholism, bipolar disorder, codependency, and physical violence were all involved. I'll spare you the details, but perhaps you can imagine. I had my own surviving to do, starting at a very young age. To study in school, I had to shut out the world around me. And to compound the situation in my early years, I was slightly to moderately dyslexic. I was overwhelmed in my earliest years in school, and I still read and often put things together slowly and sometimes awkwardly. Before the days of computer spell checkers, my dictionaries were completely worn. I still spell poorly, and my vocabulary is limited. As a result of all this, it has taken me many years, in fact decades, just to have a bit of confidence in what I do for a living. And I guarantee you, it doesn't come easily even now. Remember, I'm speaking in front of 5,000 people in Kassel Coliseum. All these graduates, parents, the president, Steger, Mark McNamee, the provost, the whole thing. For whatever reasons, many people think that I have a special, some would say unusual, insight into aspects of how nature works and even how people and groups of people work. And they say that I'm a naturally gifted teacher. And although deeply appreciative, and after being recognized in various ways by governors and senators and a number of international scientific research societies, to tell you the truth, I'm a bit embarrassed and wonder what all the fuss is about. But I guess all this isn't bad for someone who obtained well below average SAT scores and GRE scores. It isn't bad for someone who is honestly and genuinely impressed by just about everyone else except himself. It isn't bad for someone whose undergraduate application was turned down by UVA, but who managed anyway to somehow earn a professorship at Stanford University. Andrea didn't say that yet. I got my Ph.D. there, and then I stayed on as a professor for 9 years. And I was tenured there. But UVA didn't want me. I wonder if they want me down. Probably not. Now that I've told you about what people say about my skills, and what I want to say about my deficiencies, and the result of that in my life, now you tell about yourself, at least try to tell yourself, what skills and what deficiencies do you bring to the table? Keep thinking. This year, and next, dot, dot, dot. And I'm sure you've heard this before. Work toward your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. Right? Work toward your strengths, avoid your weaknesses. Personally, I think this is really bad advice. I say, work with your strengths and then turn your weaknesses into more strengths. Here's how. In my case, I know I'm having trouble reading this night because the light's not very good here, and I'm going to be 58 tomorrow. So, I'm not that bad of a reader. I'm not a great reader, but I'm not that bad. I think this is better. In my case, I know, thank you. In my case, I know I'm a bit slow, but a good communicator. So I do a lot of speaking, and I ask a lot of questions. By the way, the latter is more important anyway, than is asking questions. I know that I can see the big picture, and that I'm often more comfortable to not follow the crowd and to think independently, so I do a lot of big system science. These qualities are perfect for my kind of science. I know that I like to wonder, so I write. I know I'm passionate, so I try to take every opportunity to inspire. And on the other hand, I know that I can be naive, but instead of getting upset at people that take advantage of that in me, I usually trust everyone. And do you know what happens? They usually trust me back. Funny thing how that works. And I know that I have an inferiority complex, so I use that to not be afraid to always praise others, and to easily recognize positives in everyone, and I mean everyone, even street people that I've gone up to and talked, and I can, 5 minutes, I'm admiring who they are. That was a little ad-lib. And I'm a slow reader, so I work in a highly regarded field, physical and biological science, which does not require massive amounts of reading, like, for example, the fields of law or history would, but still quite a bit of reading. So I just stay up later at night. I know that I can't think particularly well in the abstract, so I've chosen a more concrete rather than theoretical field of science, but I refuse to let myself be intimidated by the abstract. Bring it on, I'll do my best. Yesterday in an undergraduate class in nanoscience, I gave a quantum mechanics lecture. That's extremely abstract. I can do that. But it's not my natural talent, that's for sure. So the lesson here, I'm at the end. So the lesson here, why let anything go in your life? Why not hang on to it all and let it work for you, your strengths and your deficiencies, your triumphs and your crosses to bear. But before you do that, you have to take account of it all, and that requires astute and honest observation of yourself by yourself. This is nothing that you can do in an afternoon or today in a couple of minutes. Try and continue to evaluate for the rest of your life. Okay? So, you heard my things that I'm good at, things that I'm not very good at, and I've taken account of it all and I have used it all. And that's filled up my life. And Andrea read you the professional part of that. It's surprised the hell out of me, I'll tell you that. When I started as a freshman on this campus in 1971, I hate to give you that date, but I will never forget the first class I walked into was engineering calculus. I was shaking. I thought, I can't do this. And I walked out at the end of that semester with a B. I was the happiest person in the world. And you know, you see the result now, for good or bad. So, let's move on. I want to show you some pictures for the next about half an hour. These are really fun pictures, most of them. Some of them are, you might find a bit sad. I know I do. But most of them are sort of bright and in some cases even magnificently beautiful. And can you see okay, way over there? You're good. And I'm going to try not to stand in your way either over here. So I will sort of wander carefully. And I do have a chain here. And, oh, by the way, I need to bring this up on the screen, but then I have to click to the first slide. But I don't want everyone to see my slide sorter, because that'll sort of give some stuff away. So everyone look down at the floor just for a moment. Don't look at the screen. Do not look at the screen. I will tell you when you can look up. And I will let you know, and it's not yet, and it is okay. No. Yes, okay, there you go. Thanks. All right. Here's your third question. you know what you put down, and I hope you're proud of that. Again, I'm not going to ask around, oh, what did you put, or what did you put? You can share with your friends, or maybe it's a personal thing. You don't have to share it at all. Maybe you'll never want to share with anybody in your whole life, and that's okay too. But I want you to know what you put down. This is very important. At your age, I know you've heard older people say this before, you don't realize how important what you wrote down is. It really is. But that could change, and you can go ahead and doodle with it over the years and change it. But keep that same piece of paper. It's really important to know what you wrote in 2011, and how many times you changed it or not. I'm going to go through my story just to illustrate, not because it's the details of my particular life are important to you, but what I'm going to show you is important to you, and you'll get it as we go through it, and for sure at the end if you don't get it before I'm done. But I can't tell you what that is because I don't want to give it away. I want you to discover it as I go along. So, what am I most passionate about? Well, okay, so I asked that question to myself. Well, as Andrea said, an earth scientist, look at this place. This is like the third rock from the sun, the 4 terrestrial planets in our solar system. It's 8,000 miles in diameter. It's a pretty good sized piece of hunk of rock, which is what it is. The bio part on it is just minuscule. And it's very interesting, that's why we're all here. And I study it too, like many of you. But it's just an insignificant amount of the total mass of the planet. You see this incredibly thin atmosphere here. Some of you are atmospheric scientists. It's not much, folks. I mean, it's like driving from here to Christiansburg. Whereas going that way is 8,000, like going from here to Japan. But it's this magnificent place that, you know, when you do sort of a graphic color image of it, this, by the way, is Katrina, slamming into Louisiana. I've seen pictures of the Earth where there's cloud formations that cover up the North and South America, so you can only see blue water. And they said, well, you know, if aliens were visiting and they happened to come in at this angle and then they took off, they'd think we were just a water planet. The whole thing would be covered with water. 75% of the surface of the Earth is covered with water. Anyway, these things are unusual. It's only 25% of the surface of the planet. That's what this planet's about, not this. It's here. It's where most of the life is. It's what controls most of the atmosphere, controls most of Earth chemistry is right here. Just unbelievable to study. I love this. I'm incredibly passionate about this. I always have been since I was a little kid. You know, I didn't start with rocks. I started with pictures of this. And when I was in high school, we went to the moon for the first time, 1969. I'll never forget. I took a scrapbook. Every day I put stuff in my scrapbook. Can you imagine being alive when that happened, when we left Earth for the first time and went somewhere else, how important that was?
Do you still have it?
I do, absolutely. I should. I'll bring it in sometime, Joe. I also have always been fascinated with scale. Scale, not the kind like scale on a wall or a boat, but orders of magnitude in terms of dimension, that kind of scale. So like, you know, maybe nanometers to meters to kilometers to the speed of light in a year kind of distance. And so here's a scale picture that you might like. I found this in National Geographic. See what you think of this scale picture. Isn't that cool? I mean, did you take it all in? Did you get it right away, or did it take you a second or two? I mean, this is a really interesting scale because it's not what you expect to see. You don't expect to see a tree, and then you go, oops, is that a real person? Oh, it is a real person. It's a big tree. So your mind has to flip around and go, oh yeah, that's okay. Sometimes, though, it's not so obvious, and scientists like myself might take years to understand how scales can trick you and how you have to get used to different kinds of scales when you work in domains like I work in, the very small and the very large. Right. Here's a big difference in scale from that ball to that ball. That ball has 60 atoms in it. I don't know how many Avogadro moles of atoms we have here, but I should figure that out sometime. Actually, we could do that pretty easily. We could figure out what exponent you would need to figure out how many atoms are here versus this one, which is 60. It would probably be like 10 to the 25th or 10 to the 30th, somewhere in there, pretty big number. More scale. This is looking at atoms on a surface collected by one of my former PhD students. When he was here at Virginia Tech getting his PhD, collected this picture of individual atoms on a surface. These are iron atoms on the surface of a mineral. This picture has now appeared in many textbooks, on covers of magazines, very well known. Even in introductory chemistry textbooks, you'll see that picture. And the spectra that we collected, we can collect electronic spectra from each atom. Wow. We're not only going down to atomic scale, we're going to electronic scale. An electron, the last time I checked, is a fundamental particle. You cannot take an electron and make it anything less than an electron. That's a fundamental particle. And then, of course, you have the whole life side. Here's a bacterial cell, respirating, in this case, on little nanominerals. But I just wanted to get some life in here. This is the foundation of life on this planet. Most of the biomass on this planet is here. Not in elephants and us, but bacteria. So I'm really passionate about this science. I just think it's incredible because, look, I can fly airplanes and I can use these cool microscopes and we can do quantum mechanical calculations. I can go in the field and do molecular biology, environmental science. And one time someone said, "Oh, Mike, you're just a dilettante geochemist." And my response was, "Don't you ever call me a geochemist." You know what dilettante means? It means sort of like scattered, trying to do too much, not doing anything well. But I'm sort of proud of that. Okay, so yeah, that's really cool. And I like this cartoon from Gary Larson. I met him in Paris airport a couple of years ago, actually. I could tell because he had a pink suitcase. Being a hard shell, really big pink suitcase. Anyway, an early microscope, sometimes I think I'm this guy, it's a mammoth. Sometimes I think I'm this guy, they're looking from a distance. I really like that. And sometimes it results in this. I get to put on tuxedos and win really cool things. And of course I get excited about that. I'm incredibly honored. I've had to actually put on a tux several times for these sorts of things, and it's really fun. But that's how I do all this. I do it because of everything you've seen before this picture. Okay. Well, I mean, it's pretty clear, right, that I'm just incredibly passionate about the Earth, about how it works, about how we want to preserve it for future generations and future eons of time. I mean, what could possibly excite me more than that? And maybe some of you put your profession or what you're interested in, science or engineering or whatever field you're in, on your piece of paper for being passionate. And then I got thinking, it's not, I mean, I am clearly passionate about that, but I've got to get more personal. I can't just look out of me and say, that's what I'm most passionate about. Clearly I am, but that's not what I'm most passionate about. Remember that was your question that you had to answer, what you're most passionate about. So I thought, I've really got to come inside of me. Well, what really drives me, Mike Hochella? What is it that I can feel in my own bones? So I thought again. I asked that question the second time. Let me show you what I came up with. Well, here we're starting with the Earth again. But there's a difference with this picture. The first picture of the Earth I showed you, I didn't take. In fact, I didn't take any of those big pictures of the planet and that kind of thing. But I took this picture, and I wasn't on a mountain when I took this picture. I took this out of an airplane window of an airplane. Well, actually, my wife took it out of an airplane window of a plane that I was flying. And if she wasn't there, I would have taken it myself. So here's back to the Earth, and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. This is what I'm most passionate about. It's my view. It's what I can just look and get that feeling. And by the way, this is not Alaska. We took this picture this summer. Did I say summer? This summer in July, we took this picture, and it's in Montana. This is where I spend my summers. It's where my wife is from. And I do field work there, I do a lot of writing there, and I do a lot of sitting back and doing this. I just really, do you still use the word chill? I don't know. But whatever you do, whatever word you use these days. This is Montana. And there is not a bloody person within 100 miles of this picture. It's a wilderness, it's a U.S. Federal Forest Service wilderness area. Many, many thousands of square miles. I think it's something like 5,000 square miles of nothingness. And that's what we're looking at, the Bob Marshall Wilderness in western Montana. And here's the airplane I'm flying. That's my airplane that I fly in Montana. And I mean, what can I say about airplanes? I mean, I like instruments, like big TEMs, like the instrument, big microscopes that fill up a whole room, or big instruments that you find in a national lab, or a synchrotron, or something really big like that. I love instruments. I always have. Well, here's a really cool instrument. It's not easy to do this. Look at all these controls, and if you screw up, you're dead, kind of thing. You know, it takes usually years to get your license to fly one of these things. It takes a lot of money these days. You pay just to get your most fundamental basic license. It will cost you between $5,000 and $10,000 and many months of your time. And if you screw up, you know, you could be gone or dead or seriously injured. So I take it very seriously, but I love the complexity. I love the science and engineering of these things. It's just magnificent. I'm really passionate about it because I like to take pictures like these clouds just spilling over these mountains and these walls. I mean, this could easily be a national park, but no one ever sees it because it's a wilderness area. You cannot have any mechanized machine in a wilderness area, not even a wheel. You can walk in. If you want to walk for 2 weeks, you can get to that cliff. How many people are going to do that? Certainly not the people that go to Glacier National Park, which is just north of here, and they're going to get out of their car in flip-flops with the grizzly bear right over there. I don't call that being outside. I call this experiencing the planet in its natural state. There is not a person within 50 miles of this picture. Not one person, except maybe a lone hiker or a very small group of hikers. That would take you a week to even find. And you can fly, this is called the China Wall. It's one of the U.S.'s most distinct and famous sights that no one ever sees. But I'm looking at it from the air too. And you can get pretty close. Look at this one. Isn't that, I mean, it's sort of like you get goosebumps going by this. I mean, and we can also hike in here too. So we can see it from the ground, we can see it here. And so then I go, okay, now I just have to show you this. I want to land in the middle of the wilderness area. There happens to be a U.S. Forest Service ranger station right in the trees right here, made by hand because you can't have any machinery here. So they had to fly in saws, no power saws, just hand saws and stuff, and they built small cabins right in here for the U.S. Forest Service rangers that help keep this area special. But there's a meadow here, and it's the most famous landing spot in the 48 states, not including Alaska, of course. And so I'm going to land here, which is really hard to do because it's very short. There are mountains all around. You can't bring a jet in here, no way. You have to only bring very small airplanes in here because they're the only thing that fit. And I'm going to come in right here with my instructor pilot because I don't want to kill myself. If I make a mistake, he's there to save me. Turns out he didn't have to save me on this trip, but you never know. I'm going to come in right here over right by these trees, within feet of these big trees. You hit one of them and you're dead. And I'm going to land right about in there and roll out right here. And you're going to see what this looks like. And here's after we landed. Here's the plane we flew in. Here's the runway. See all these big mountains around here. And that's not very wide, and that's not much space. But that's the only place you have to put this plane down. And here's what it looks like from the side of the airplane. My son is in the back seat, looking out the side of the airplane. So here's a wing. There's a flap. which are extended now because you need to go as slow as possible. And as slow as possible is like 70 miles an hour. So like you're on Interstate 81, going the speed limit, and that's the speed you're going to land. And here's what it looks like. And watch when the wing comes up, you can see the mountains right there, like, oh, okay, watch it. And now watch how close the trees get. We get lower and lower and lower. And we're going to zoom right past the trees right there. And then we're going to come out in the, really close right there. Come out in the clearing. We're now just about the runway. There's the windsock. We hit the ground softly, although Michael's back in the back bouncing around. And that's what it's like landing at this strip. And I'm going, whew. This is not like landing at JFK, which I've landed at big airports. And as the plane turns around, you can look back down the runway, and you can see where we just came from, right down there. Okay. So, just to show you what this looks like, now we're on the ground, and one more plane is going to come in today, and it's going to land, so you're going to see it coming in, and this is what we just did. But now you're going to see it from the vantage point of the ground for another pilot just coming in, and you can see, oops, that. And you can see what it looks like if you're on the ground. Another plane's coming in. So there's that cut in the trees right there, and here comes the plane right there. And it's like, okay, there's not a whole lot of room to spare there, and that's the Beechcraft Bonanza, a really fine airplane, and he can't quite land it, and he'd like to do as well as I did, but there he finally got in, and he's safe. He's good. Clearly, I think this is really cool. This is all about me now. It's not about the big world of science. It's just an internal thing. That must be the most passionate thing I can possibly think of. And it's just a hobby. But it's the earth thing, you know, and it's the flying thing, and it's the machine thing. It's all these things put together. It's a little bit of danger and risk. But I train really hard to do this well. So that must be the most passionate, right? And then I go, wow. Well, it just is not, you know, it's not just about me. It's got to be about other people. And the science thing and other people, well, first thing I think of is my graduate student group. Through the years, and this is an old picture, as you can see, and he's now a very famous professor at Ohio State. He just got an award directly from President Obama, shook his hand. I'm kidding. He's a professor in Oregon, he's a professor in Oklahoma, she's a professor in New York, and on like that. Really, I mean, these people mean the world to me. And this is an old picture. Here's all these years later, many people have come through our lab, many people have given me the honor to work with them. And here's a very recent one. So here's Bojan, she's sitting right back there now. Here's Andre talked about Rebecca French, who's going to work for Senator Saunders' office in Vermont. This is Deborah Arrighetti, many of you know her. She works at NSF now. She's an assistant program manager at NSF. She's going to have a great NSF career. These are all incredibly talented people. And yeah, I mean, these people mean the world to me. I am so passionate about these people. They literally mean the world to me because they do more than great science and go on to become famous people. But they like me and I like them. I mean, we work really well together. And, you know, this is me giving a lecture, speaking of friends that you communicate with. This is me giving a lecture in Beijing, China, at Peking University. It's the Harvard of China. I'm giving this lecture, and these people they mean the world to me. I mean, they're associates of mine, they're interested in what we do, and I'm interested in what they do, and so on and so forth. Or I go to London, and this is William Smith. He drew the first geologic map ever in existence, in the earliest part of the 1800s, latest 1700s. Someone just wrote a book about him that became a New York Times bestseller, William Smith, the map that changed the world. Because geologic mapping did change the world. And here it is. Here is his original map, geologic map of the British Isles. Can you imagine doing that in the late 1700s? I mean, we hardly even knew how old. Many people thought the Earth was still 6,000 years old. Speaking of students that mean the world to me, this This is Nick Wigington. He's a former Ph.D. student of mine, not that long ago, about 5, 6 years ago. You know what he's doing now? Nick, and here's the map, by the way. Nick is an editor at Science Magazine. That's a pretty big deal. He's incredibly talented. I'm really passionate about watching them grow and mature and go off and do great things. Look at this family. What a beautiful American family. These are both PhD students of mine. She's in the publishing business now, very successful. He's in the National Lab Science business now, extremely successful. These are their kids. I feel like these are my kids. That's how important these people are to me. Oh, you might get the drift now. That's just incredible. That's the best thing so far. But still not 100%. I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I've gone deep enough. You know, it's like an onion where you keep taking off layers. And you take off a layer and you go, that's it. That's the bottom layer. And then you go, well, wait a minute, there's a layer below it. Or maybe I won't realize that until next year or next decade. That's why I want you to keep this piece of paper. Because there are probably layers below what you wrote down. So I explored what layer was below even that for me. And I asked the question, what are we on, number 4 here, I think. Are we on number 4? I think we are. Yeah. This is my 4th try. I think I get it right. What am I most passionate about? All right. I'm going to show you an old picture of 2 really old people that are really special to me. I never met these people. But they were immigrants from Slovakia in Central Europe. Town of Bratislava, which is very close to Vienna, Austria. And they were the parents of my dad's mom. So these are my great-grandparents, the parents of my father's mother. I never met my father's mother. In fact, my dad doesn't even remember his mother because, and here is my dad right here. This is the family he grew up in. These are all Slovakian immigrants from the 19-teens to the 1920s. This picture was taken in about 1927. And my dad's mother was already dead. So the parents that I just showed you in the last picture had already lost their daughter in 1927. She died when my dad was 2 and he's 3 now. She had appendicitis. In those days, when you needed an anesthetic for surgery, they gave you ether. Can you imagine? Put it on a cotton swab or gauze and put it over your mouth. If you're allergic to ether, you would be dead in minutes, and that's what happened with her. So really tragic. He was raised by his aunt, Aunt Mary, right here, another immigrant. And a lot of these people made it in life, and a lot of them didn't. A lot of them died young. A lot of them had alcoholism problems. A lot of them lived in steel factories, and like his father, who survived his wife's death. His father, my dad's father, my grandfather, worked in a steel mill in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. This is taken in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And they worked in the coal mines and the steel mills. And this is the family. This is the Hochella family right here. And my dad's dad, so his dad, was working in a steel factory and had his hand cut off. It was really dangerous work. It was really tough going. They had to survive the depression and so on and so forth. And this was my dad in World War II. He was a pilot. This is his airplane, one of his airplanes. It's called Boom Boom. Interesting name that they would paint on the side. You see the big propeller here. They wonder about my flying, huh? Maybe it's in my blood. And this is my dad's grave. I just redid his marker. He died 5 years ago. See, here's my name. I'm Junior. So this is Michael F. Hochella. I'm Junior. And look at what he did. The Bronze Star Medal, the Distinguished Flying Cross. That's a really big deal. It's the top medal that a pilot can win for valor in combat. And the Purple Heart, of course, because he almost got killed many times. And he won the Distinguished Flying Cross not once, but twice. It's almost impossible. And here are the medals right here that I had put on his, to remember him. But here he was with his crew, and he, within a couple missions after this, you can see each marker there is one mission. A couple missions after this, they crashed. One of the crew members, I forget which one, I have to read this and point him out to you, went down with the plane. It was in the water, in the ocean. But the next day, some pilots came back and landed in the water and picked them up and saved all their lives. I wouldn't be here if that person, if that Navy Catalina pilot didn't land with this amphibious airplane, land in the water with the enemy at that time, now our best friends, the Japanese, bombing that plane. And somehow they didn't get hit and took off and saved his life. But I want you to notice one thing here. Look at, my dad was the pilot. He was the pilot, this is the crew. They all have other jobs. He's flying the airplane. He sits right here. That's his seat. See his seat right there? And this is a pretty big airplane, so these guys are all throughout this airplane. And see that hole right there? See that hole? That's a bullet hole. If that bullet would have been a couple inches to the left, I wouldn't be here. Think about everything that happens in your life, that if something is just a little different, you wouldn't be here. Maybe it was that drunk driver that you passed the other night, but they didn't happen to hit you. We never know about these things. And, okay, who is this guy? Huh? I mean, he's cute. He's got the hair, he's got the look, you know, the drool coming down. I still do that when I have a good sleep. Yeah, that's me. And this is my absolutely darling sister Janet, who, like my dad, suffered from mental illness and now died. She died in her 50s, her early 50s. And this is my sister Gail, who is happy and healthy like me, luckily. And, you know, despite our, you heard what my growing up in my years were like. You can guess by now my dad was an alcoholic. I wonder why. I mean, after he had 9 lives in World War I and Korean War. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe. But, I mean, despite what I read you, I love them like I can't imagine. And so my passion runs even deeper. There's the next layer of onion down. My passion is even deeper. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. It's 5:06. And I'm thinking, you're going, Mike, you can't go one more. Come on, don't do it. Don't go one more. But I'm going to do it. There is one more. And this is the last one. This is the core of my life. And I know it. And anything will ever change that will change this. It only took me a couple decades to figure this out. I wonder if any of you put it here. For all of you, almost all of you, you would have to probably look forward in your life to things you would anticipate doing in the future, because most of you would not have this experience yet. But what I'm going to say is, what I'm going to show you now is the core, is what I'm most passionate about, and is what everything else I do is built upon. And if I die tomorrow on my 58th birthday, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I have found the core of my passion. And once you do that, it doesn't matter what happens. Everything is there. And it doesn't matter. You know, the Grim Reaper is going to come to all of us, and you don't know when. And so that's not the problem. I mean, that's just biology, right? The problem is getting there without realizing what is your true core passion. That's where you will be, if I could give you one lesson in my last lecture, it would be you've got to find that as soon as possible, and you have to act on it now. Now, it might take you many, many years to achieve that passion, but as long as you're working toward it, if the Grim Reaper comes tomorrow, you'll be okay. You really will be okay. This has been shown psychologically many times, but not many people know this, but now you do. And so, here it is. Ultimately, what is my life really about? Okay, I get it now. This is the last line. This is it. And I'm going to start with something that's very, very sad to me. It was one of the defining moments of my entire life. Not the picture that you're going to see next, but what came after this picture. And here is my first wife. Sorry. It's 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Her name is Jean Severide. Her uncle was a very, very famous CBS news correspondent, Eric Severide, who was on the news with Walter Cronkite. If you remember way back in news, Walter Cronkite was the most famous American newscaster of his day. And his main analyst was Eric Severide, her uncle. And Eric Severide is a very famous journalist, internationally famous, written several classic books, came to our wedding. I thought that was really cool. Well, what you're looking at is the title page of a book. And I'll show you the book. It's right here. This is the book that I wrote when Jean died, in my arms. And if any of you would ever like to read this, you're welcome. I had 50 copies printed, and I gave them to Jean's family and to all of her best friends, and I kept one copy for myself. And it's a book of grief, but it's a book of triumph and joy as well. So it's quite inspirational. You want to see what I was writing 35 years ago. Oh, and this is, by the way, when I was starting my professorship at Stanford University. Did it all at the same time. We did this, and the science part, and the family part, all at the same time. Okay, so, this is my daughter. This is a picture taken about 4 years ago. And you look at his expression, and he's looking at that ring, and he's going like, oh. And you know what? He should, because you know what that ring is? That is a pure sapphire of historic importance. The value of that stone is about $3 million. We are at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., at the Mineral and Gem Collection in the back of the museum where no visitors can go. But I know the scientists there. They're personal friends of mine. And so I get to take her class to the backstage of the Smithsonian to put on priceless jewelry. This thing, the history of this stone goes back centuries. It's a priceless sapphire. And it's being worn by one of the most important people in my life. This is my passion. And here she is this summer. We're going to hike up. She's 15. 15. She's listening to her iPod, wants to watch TV. Well, yeah, but she also is going to climb this 9,000-foot peak. The highest point in Virginia is 5,700 feet. This is a 9,000-foot peak. She's hiking just the two of us. We're going to hike down this deep valley and come back up. We hiked a mile in elevation that day. Over 5,000 feet of vertical climb. The next picture is going to be right here at the snow. This is in July. Still a lot of snow up there. Here she's hiking past that patch right there. And she's on the top. And she was so proud. And man, was I proud of her. This is a really cool thing. She said, Dad, next summer can we go to 12,000 feet? Sure. Why not? Let's do it, man. Let's go. All right. She is amazing. Ah, who's this little guy? This guy is our son. Oh, by the way, after Jean's passing, she died in a flying accident, actually. And after her passing, I made the biggest mistake that I thought I'd never do, and this could happen to you too, but that's okay if it does. Like you say, I'll never do that, and then you do it, and then you go, why did I do that? But I was so grief-stricken with Jean's death that on the rebound, I married Sherry. Sherry's a great person. We have nothing in common. She just filled up my loneliness. About a year and a half, we got married about a year and a half after Jean's death, which was way too early. Never do that so early. And Sherry and I, we just, you know, I just finally had to leave because she was better off without me. And so we parted ways. She's doing fine, I'm doing fine. And then several years later, I married the person I should have, you know, married after Jean, after all, and that's Barbara. And we've been very happily married, I'm glad to say. And she's still very healthy and happy and all that kind of stuff for 20 years. And we have these two children, Catherine and this is Michael. So this is Michael when he was 8 years old, and he just loved, I don't play, Andre said I do golf. Well, I don't play golf, I watch it. I watch him, because he's really good. I'm so bad I don't even do it anymore. But here he is, the first summer he played golf, he was 8 years old. It was his idea to take this up, not mine. And here he is now, here's his leg. He's on the William & Mary golf team. He plays Division I golf. He was playing against Ohio State the other week. He's that good. And here he is as an adult, well, 19 years old now, as a sophomore at William & Mary. And he's a great student. He's majoring in science and chemistry, biology, environmental science. And he's also a really good golfer. And again, it's like my daughter. I mean, this is the core of my life, right here. And, oh, by the way, does anyone recognize where he's playing? It's not California. The William & Mary team went to Ireland. This is the Atlantic Ocean. This is looking out over the Atlantic Ocean on the west coast of Ireland. And this green is 200 yards away. And I even still remember where that shot went. I mean, I go watch him play all the time. Well, here's Barbara. I mean, how lucky can I be? She is, I mean, you know, our kids are both slightly dyslexic. Isn't it interesting? But luckily, she was like a valedictorian and was almost a Rhodes Scholar. Became within one person of becoming a Rhodes Scholar. So she put some real brain power in our kids. And so anyway, our genetics mixed well, and we have these two amazing children. And it's pretty good though. And we love to hike. And so here we are. This is when a couple of years ago we went to Scotland, and we took a ferry up to the Orkney Islands. Very rough seas. The wind was blowing about 50 miles an hour. We were almost blown overboard here. I mean, it was really cold. Amazing. But that's how happy we were. And life, this is the quote I gave to Tatya. Life is beautiful, taken one day at a time with love and patience. I had to be really patient to get to this stage, folks. You know, the house I grew up in, the trials and tribulations I've had, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself at all. I'm the luckiest person in the world. And there's Michael, and there's Catherine, there's Barb, and we're skiing in Montana. You know, what could be better than that? And so let me end, because now we're at 5 after, and we do need to end now. Just with one final thing. So first of all, you're going to keep your paper. You're going to keep thinking about what you're most passionate about. And if it changes, like it has for me, maybe not 5 times for you, maybe you got it right the first time. But keep redefining that, and keep, as you define it, go for it. Go for it. Really, really hard. And then you will have lived your life well, even if you don't fortunate enough to live as long as I have. And maybe I have another year, and maybe I have another 30 years. I'm to the age now where I have friends that, you know, they get cancer and they're gone. So I'm starting to think about these things. The last thought I want to leave you with is this, a very important footnote, going back to my dad. I'll end with a story from my dad, who, despite his very serious challenges, loved me more than anything in the world. from about middle school on, he told me over and over and over and over again, son, always aim high and don't be afraid to fail. And I have failed a lot, and it's made me better and stronger. Now you always hear that, but it's true. You'll be better off. Everyone fails. Everybody on the planet fails. It's okay. It's what you do after the failure that makes the difference. And if you turn that deficiency into your advantage, like we talked about at the beginning, you'll be doing really well. Thank you very much.
Mike, thank you so much for your presentation, for sharing your experiences of your life, and to celebrate your anniversary of life tomorrow. We have your birthday cake. So we sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mike. Happy birthday to you. I think you told Tasha.
Oh, did I?
So we were going to do candles, but we've been informed that we have to have like, well, we were just going to have a few, but then we were informed that you can't really do candles without, going through a bunch of open flame permit paperwork. Yeah. So I was like, for this, really? But yeah. So we've got plates. So let's see. All right. So what would you like? In the corner, middle?
Yeah, I'd like it.
All right.
Very, very middle.
No, it's sort of nice seeing that. Oh, it's so nice. Yeah, I like the balloons are really cool too.
Let's see.
Yeah. Everyone else can have some cake too, don't worry. We're not just going to make you watch.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's a failure. We'll still need to say that.
Alright. I'll cut these a little on the small side to make sure we go around. Maybe we'll have extra at the end. I hope we don't have to go around.
There's.
I try to get a bunch of this.
Just grab it.
What?
Grab